Jiwoo wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the cargo manifest for the third time. His ship, the Morning Star, was loaded with medical supplies and construction equipment bound for Viridian 7, a small mining colony on the edge of Coalition space. It was routine work, the kind that paid just enough to keep the ship running and the crew fed. "Everything locked down?" his brother Hyunsik asked, climbing up from the medical bay below. The younger man carried a portable scanner, always prepared for emergencies. "Almost done," Jiwoo replied. "Mirai is still working on the engine coupling. Says we'll be ready to jump in an hour." From deep within the ship's mechanical heart came a loud clang, followed by creative cursing. Mirai had a special relationship with the Morning Star's aging engines. She could make them sing when needed, but they demanded constant attention and occasional threats. Daehyun stood near the airlock, silent as always. The scarred man served as their security officer, though they rarely needed one on these milk runs. He was older than the rest of them, maybe 40, with gray threading through his black hair and eyes that had seen things he never talked about. Jiwoo had hired him 2 years ago, and Daehyun had never given him reason to regret it. "We should go," Daehyun said quietly, his hand resting near his sidearm. "Something feels wrong." Jiwoo had learned to trust Daehyun's instincts. The man had a sixth sense for trouble. But the departure schedule was tight, and they were already behind by 6 hours due to Port Authority delays. 5 more minutes, Jiwoo decided. "Mirai needs to finish, and I want those supplies secured properly." They lifted off without incident. The jump to Viridian 7 would take 3 days through normal space, followed by a short hyperspace burst. The Morning Star wasn't fast, but she was reliable. Mostly. The first 2 days passed in comfortable routine. Hyunsik organized his medical supplies and ran inventory. Mirai tinkered with every system on the ship, improving efficiency by tiny percentages that added up over time. Daehyun cleaned his weapons and ran security checks. Jiwoo managed the navigation and kept up with the endless paperwork that came with being an independent hauler. On the third day, the proximity alarm screamed. Jiwoo was on the bridge instantly, Daehyun right behind him. The scanner showed a ship dropping out of hyperspace directly in their path. It was big, 3 times the Morning Star's size, with weapon ports open and targeting systems active. "Pirates," Daehyun said, his voice flat. The communication channel crackled. "Cargo vessel, cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resist and we will destroy you." Jiwoo's hands moved across the controls, but he already knew the truth. They couldn't outrun that ship, and they certainly couldn't fight it. The Morning Star had minimal defensive systems and no offensive weapons at all. "What do we do?" Hyunsik asked, appearing in the doorway with Mirai close behind. "We comply," Jiwoo said. "They want the cargo, not us. We hand it over and hope they leave." Daehyun's jaw tightened, but he nodded. It was the smart choice. The only choice, really. The pirate ship matched velocity and extended a docking tube. Through the airlock viewport, Jiwoo watched them come. They were Kraul, massive reptilian creatures that stood 3 meters tall. Their scales were thick as armor. Their claws could shred steel, and their homeworld had gravity twice that of Earth. They were born warriors from a culture that celebrated strength. The Coalition classified humans as Category 3 species, physically unremarkable, short-lived and fragile compared to most spacefaring races. Humans bruised easily. Their bones broke under stress that other species would barely notice, and they needed constant environmental controls to survive. The Kraul were Category 1, apex predators that other species feared. 6 Kraul warriors entered the Morning Star, their leader wearing marks of rank across his chest. His name was Thex, and he looked at the human crew the way a person might look at insects. "You are the captain?" Thex asked, his translator rendering his growling speech into flat, emotionless words. "I am," Jiwoo said, keeping his voice steady. "Your cargo manifest, now." Jiwoo handed over the datapad. Thex scrolled through it, his expression showing disappointment. Medical supplies and construction equipment weren't valuable compared to luxury goods or weapons. "This is all?" Thex demanded. "That's everything." The Kraul leader's tail lashed in annoyance. "Worthless. We waste fuel for nothing." He looked at his warriors. "Search the ship anyway. Take anything of value. Kill anyone who resists." That was when Daehyun moved. The older man didn't draw his weapon. Instead, he stepped forward and spoke in perfect Kraul language, the growling syllables harsh in his human throat. Whatever he said made Thex turn slowly to face him. "You speak our tongue, little human?" Thex asked, sounding amused. Did you serve with Crawl Warriors? I did, Daehyun replied in Coalition Standard. I know your people. I know you value strength and courage. I also know you value honor. Soft ones do not lecture me about honor, Thex snarled. Then let me ask you something, Daehyun continued, his voice calm. If we resist, will you really kill us? Or will you just hurt us and take what you want anyway? Thex bared his teeth in what might have been a smile. I will do whatever amuses me, human. Then we might as well fight, Daehyun said. He looked at Jiwoo. Captain? Jiwoo felt his heart hammering. This was insane. They couldn't fight Crawl Warriors. It would be suicide. But he looked at his brother, at Mirai, at Daehyun, and saw something in their eyes. Not acceptance of death, but refusal to surrender without trying. Mirai, Jiwoo said quietly. Protocol 7. The engineer's eyes widened, then she nodded and vanished down the corridor. Thex laughed, a booming sound that echoed through the ship. Protocol 7? What foolishness is this? It means, Jiwoo said, that you've made a mistake. The lights went out. Emergency strips glowed red along the floor, casting everything in bloody shadows. Through the ship's speakers came a high-pitched whine that made the Crawl Warriors flinch and grab at their ears. Humans had different hearing ranges than Crawl. Mirai had set the frequency to be uncomfortable for reptilian hearing, but barely noticeable to human ears. Then the temperature spiked. Mirai had dumped coolant from the cargo bay and opened heating vents throughout the ship. The temperature soared from comfortable to sweltering in seconds. Humans could sweat, could regulate their body temperature through moisture evaporation. Crawl couldn't. They started breathing harder, their movements becoming sluggish. Daehyun struck first. He grabbed a metal pipe from its wall mount and swung it like a club at the nearest warrior's knee joint. The Crawl's armor was thick, but joints were always vulnerable. The warrior stumbled, surprised by both the attack and the pain. Hyunsik threw a container of medical alcohol into another warrior's face, temporarily blinding him. It wouldn't last long, but seconds mattered in a fight. Jiwoo hit the emergency vent release. Superheated steam blasted through the corridor, forcing the Crawl Warriors to fall back toward the airlock. It wasn't hot enough to seriously hurt them, but combined with everything else, it overwhelmed their senses. Thex roared orders, trying to restore control. His warriors were trained and dangerous, but they were fighting in an environment that turned hostile, against opponents who seemed to know exactly how to exploit every disadvantage. The fight lasted less than 3 minutes. The Crawl retreated to their ship, dragging one warrior whose knee bent at an unnatural angle. Daehyun had done that with nothing but a pipe and knowledge of anatomy. As the docking tube separated, Thex stared through the viewport at the human crew. His expression was no longer amused. It was thoughtful and perhaps something else. Perhaps it was respect, or maybe it was the first touch of fear. The Morning Star's engines burned hard, putting distance between them and the pirate vessel. Jiwoo expected pursuit, expected weapons fire, but none came. The Crawl ship simply hung in space, watching them go. In the medical bay, Hyunsik treated minor burns and bruises. Mirai was already restoring ship systems to normal. Daehyun stood by himself, looking at his hands. The knuckles were split and bleeding, but he didn't seem to notice. Why didn't they follow us? Hyunsik asked. Daehyun looked up, his scarred face unreadable. Because we confused them. They thought we were prey. We showed them we're not. But we're just humans, Mirai said. We're fragile. Everyone knows that, are we? Daehyun asked softly. We break bones and keep fighting. We get sick and recover. We live on a planet that has weather that kills, diseases that spread, and predators that hunt. And we survived all of it to reach the stars. Maybe we're not as fragile as everyone thinks. Jiwoo plotted a new course, one that would take them to Viridian 7 through safer routes, but he couldn't stop thinking about the look in Thex's eyes at the end. They had won a fight they should have lost, and somehow Jiwoo suspected that the consequences of that victory were just beginning. The mercenary bar on Station Epsilon smelled of alien alcohol and desperation. Seojin sat in the corner, nursing a drink while his squad celebrated another successful contract. They were human Marines, technically civilians now, but still carrying themselves like soldiers. The Coalition paid well for security work, and humans had become surprisingly popular for the job. Across the galaxy, 3 stories were unfolding at the same time. Seojin's squad had just finished defending a mining operation from raiders. It should have been routine. 12 human Marines against 30 pirates of various species. The odds were bad, but the pay was good, and Marines didn't turn down contracts just because they were difficult. The attack came at night, when most species needed rest. The pirates expected to find guards sleeping or slow to respond. Instead, they found humans at full alert. Humans didn't need as much sleep as most species, and they could function on brief naps for days if necessary. The fight lasted 6 hours. Seojin took a hit early, something that dislocated his shoulder and sent pain shooting down his arm. A medic started toward him, but Seojin waved him off. He braced himself against a wall, grabbed his arm, and pulled hard. The joint popped back into place with a sound that made the alien miners watching from safety flinch. Seojin picked up his rifle and kept fighting. The pirates, mostly Krull and another species called Visians, couldn't understand it. They had seen the human go down. They had heard him cry out in pain. Yet minutes later, he was back in the fight as if nothing had happened. Humans healed fast, but more than that, they had an extraordinary ability to simply ignore pain when necessary. Evolution had given them bodies that could keep functioning even when damaged. It was a survival trait from a world where stopping meant death. By dawn, the pirates retreated. They left behind equipment and 3 of their own wounded. Seojin's squad had 2 injuries serious enough to need medical attention, but both Marines would be back on duty within a week. The story spread through mercenary channels within days. The word used in the reports was disturbing: relentless. The humans had been relentless. Halfway across the galaxy, Yuna was having a different conversation. She worked as a corporate security consultant, protecting high-value shipments for wealthy clients. Her current contract was escorting a merchant convoy through disputed space. The ships carried luxury goods worth millions of credits, which made them targets. When the mercenary group called Crimson Talon intercepted the convoy, Yuna expected violence. Instead, their leader requested a meeting. He was a Visian, a quadruped with natural armor and a reputation for cunning. They met in the neutral space between ships, floating in environmental suits with weapons holstered as a sign of temporary peace. "We want your cargo," the Visian leader said bluntly. "Your escort is too small to stop us. Surrender and we let you live." Yuna looked at him through her helmet visor. "I have a counter-proposal. Leave now, and I don't have to show you why humans are getting expensive to hire." The Visian's translator carried his amusement. "You bluff. You are one human with a small team against my warband." "Let me show you something," Yuna said. She drew a knife, and immediately every weapon on both sides came up. She held up her other hand. "I'm not attacking. I'm educating." Before anyone could stop her, she cut her own palm. Blood welled up bright red against her glove. The Visian watched, confused. "Humans bleed easily," Yuna said calmly. "Our skin is thin. We bruise from impacts that wouldn't hurt most species. Everyone knows we're fragile." She squeezed her hand, letting blood drip. "But watch what happens." She held up her hand. The bleeding was already slowing. Within 30 seconds, it stopped completely. Her blood was clotting, forming a seal over the wound. "Humans evolved to survive bleeding," Yuna continued. "We can lose a significant amount of blood and remain conscious. We can take injuries that would put other species into shock and keep functioning." "Do you know why?" The Visian said nothing. "Because we come from a world where everything tries to kill you, where predators hunt in the dark, where diseases spread through populations, where weather can change from pleasant to lethal in hours. We survived all of that. We're still here. Now ask yourself, do you really want to find out what else we can survive?" She bandaged her hand with practiced efficiency. "My convoy is going through. You can try to stop us, or you can let us pass and find easier prey. Your choice." The Crimson Talon let them pass. Yuna's demonstration became legend in certain circles. The human who cut herself to prove a point. The human who explained survival traits like they were weapons. The human who made mercenaries question whether the payday was worth the risk. At the Coalition Research Institute, Bowman was giving a presentation that was supposed to be academic. He was a xenobiologist and his specialty was comparative evolution. Today's lecture was on human evolution, and the audience was filled with scientists from a dozen species. The human homeworld. Earth is classified as a Category 7 environment, Bowman began, displaying images of Earth's various biomes. This classification means it is unusually hostile to life. Extreme temperature variations, severe weather patterns, high biodiversity leading to intense competition for resources, and a remarkable number of organisms capable of killing humans. He clicked to the next slide, showing early human ancestors. Humans evolved as pursuit predators. Their primary hunting strategy was persistence hunting, chasing prey for hours, sometimes days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. No other species in the coalition developed this strategy, because most didn't need to. They were either strong enough to kill prey quickly, or they developed other evolutionary advantages. An alien scientist raised a manipulator. But humans are not strong. They are weaker than most Category 1 species. Exactly, Bowman agreed. Humans didn't win through strength. They won through endurance. A human can run for hours at a steady pace. Their ability to sweat allows them to cool their bodies while moving, something most species cannot do. They can survive on minimal water and food for extended periods. They can function with interrupted sleep for days. He pulled up a comparison chart. Here is where it becomes interesting. Human pain tolerance is not exceptionally high, but their psychological ability to continue functioning despite pain is remarkable. They possess what we call compartmentalization, the ability to acknowledge an injury but continue working around it. The lecture continued, becoming more disturbing with each point. Humans could eat foods that would poison other species and survive. Their immune systems were aggressive, fighting off infections that would kill others. They could adapt to extreme environments, from frozen tundras to scorching deserts. They could even survive radiation exposure that would be immediately lethal to many coalition species. In conclusion, Bowman said, humans are not fragile despite their appearance. They are adaptable. They are persistent. And perhaps most importantly, they are survivors by nature. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every single day. And they not only survived but thrived enough to reach the stars. The scientists in the audience were silent. Several were taking notes frantically. Others looked disturbed. One asked, "Should we be concerned about human expansion into coalition space?" Bowman considered the question carefully. "I believe we should be curious rather than concerned. Humans have shown no aggressive expansion tendencies. They follow coalition law. They integrate well with other species. But yes, we should remember that they are not what they appear to be. They are in their own way quite dangerous when threatened." Within a month, the three stories had merged into one narrative that spread through the criminal underworld and military channels alike. Mercenary companies began circulating updated threat assessments. Human contracts were reassessed with higher danger ratings. The term Deathworlder appeared in reports, a slang term for species that evolved on unusually hostile planets. Humans, it seemed, were Deathworlders, and the galaxy was just beginning to understand what that meant. In a secure meeting room on a crawl warship, Thex sat with other mercenary company leaders. His knee had healed, but he still limped. The injury from that human with the metal pipe had been worse than he admitted. "We underestimated them," Thex said. "All of us. We saw small, soft creatures and assumed they were weak. We were wrong." A Vissian leader shifted her weight. "My scouts report similar encounters. Humans who should surrender instead fight. Humans who should retreat instead adapt. They turn every disadvantage into a weapon. So what do we do?" Another mercenary asked. Thex bared his teeth. "We test them properly. The Vorth Collective owes me a favor. They are hunters, the best in the galaxy. If anyone can capture human specimens and determine their true capabilities, it is them. And if the Vorth fail?" Thex was quiet for a long moment. "Then we will know that the soft ones are more dangerous than any of us imagined. And we will need to decide whether humans are potential allies or potential threats." The contract was issued the next day, 10 million credits for live human captives. The Vorth Collective accepted. The hunt was about to begin. The jungle moon of Tanis IV was beautiful in the way that deadly things often are. Triple canopy forest stretched across most of the surface, with trees reaching heights that would have been impossible on Earth. The air was thick with humidity and the constant sound of alien life competing for survival. Jiwoo brought the morning star down at the research outpost's landing pad, grateful for another routine supply run. The outpost was small, just 5 buildings clustered in a cleared area, surrounded by sensor fences to keep the local wildlife out. Most of it was harmless, but Tanis IV had its share of predators. Yunji met them at the landing pad, her face showing relief. She was the outpost director, a xenobotanist who had spent 3 years studying the moon's aggressive plant life. Her assistant Junho followed behind carrying scanning equipment. "Thank goodness you're here," Yunji said. "We've been running low on everything. The supply ship was supposed to come last month." "We heard it got diverted," Jiwoo replied, supervising as Mirai and Hyunsik began unloading crates. "Some kind of emergency in the core systems." Daehyun was already scanning the perimeter, his instincts active. Something about this place made his skin itch, a feeling he had learned never to ignore. The jungle was too quiet. Not silent, but the sounds were wrong somehow. Another ship landed an hour later, a small civilian transport piloted by Soo-hyun. She was delivering personal supplies and mail, one of the independent couriers who made their living on the frontier routes. She was young, maybe 25, with the kind of optimism that came from not yet seeing how dangerous space could be. That night, they gathered in the outpost's common room for dinner. It was a tradition on isolated stations, sharing a meal with visitors who brought news from the wider galaxy. Yunji prepared food from the outpost's gardens, vegetables that had adapted surprisingly well to Tanis 4's soil. "How's research going?" Hyunsik asked, always interested in scientific work. Yunji's enthusiasm was immediate. "Incredible. The plant life here is more aggressive than anything in the databases. They compete for sunlight, water, nutrients, everything. Some species actually attack other plants, injecting toxins or strangling them with vines. It's beautiful in its brutality." "Sounds like Earth," Daehyun commented quietly. "That's what I thought," Yunji agreed. "This moon's ecosystem reminds me of Earth's rainforests. Competitive, dangerous, but ultimately balanced. Everything has its place in the cycle." They didn't know that hidden in the jungle, dozens of monitoring devices were recording everything they said. The Vorth Collective had been watching the outpost for 2 weeks, studying the humans, learning their patterns and behaviors. The Vorth were perfect hunters. Their insectoid bodies were built for stealth and speed, their minds connected through pheromone communication that allowed perfect coordination. They could wait for days without moving, could track prey across any terrain, and they never gave up once they selected a target. The Vorth pack leader, a creature humans would have called a queen, analyzed the data from her drones. These humans were interesting specimens. They showed no fear of the jungle environment, even though the xenobotanist's own reports indicated dangerous predators nearby. They moved efficiently, wasted no energy, and maintained constant awareness of their surroundings. The attack came at midnight. Daehyun was on watch, standing outside the main building with a rifle. He saw nothing, heard nothing, but he felt something. The jungle sounds had stopped completely. That was when he knew. "Everyone up," he shouted into his communicator. "We're under attack." The first Vorth drone hit the sensor fence and died in a shower of sparks, but 3 more came behind it, moving so fast they were barely visible in the darkness. They bypassed the fence by leaping over it, their powerful legs launching them 5 meters into the air. Daehyun fired, his shots precise even in the dark. He hit one drone, then another, but more kept coming. The Vorth were testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. Jiwoo emerged from the building, weapon ready. Hyunsik went to wake Yunji and Junho while Mirai headed for the equipment shed. Soo-hyun appeared moments later, her eyes wide with fear but her hands steady. The first assault lasted 10 minutes. The Vorth pulled back after losing a dozen drones, leaving their dead scattered around the compound. In the emergency lights, the humans got their first clear look at what they were fighting. The Vorth were each about a meter long, with 6 legs and mandibles that could shred metal. Their exoskeletons were mottled green and brown, perfect camouflage for the jungle. But the most disturbing thing was how they moved, perfectly synchronized as if controlled by a single mind. "What are those things?" Soo-hyun asked, her voice shaking. "Vorth," Daehyun said grimly. "Hive mind hunters. We're in serious trouble." Hyunsik was examining one of the dead drones with his medical scanner. They're using pheromones to communicate. "See this organ here? It both receives and transmits chemical signals. Can we use that?" Jiwoo asked. "Maybe," Mirai said, appearing from the equipment shed with an armload of tools. "If we can analyze the pheromones, I might be able to create interference." The second attack came at dawn. This time the Vorth used different tactics. They struck from multiple directions, forcing the humans to split their attention. Junho was caught in the open, separated from the main group when a section of fence went down. "I've got him," Daehyun shouted, running toward the young man. But a Vorth drone was faster, leaping onto Junho's back and driving him to the ground. Its mandibles carved through his shoulder before Daehyun's shot blew it apart. They dragged Junho inside while Hyunsik worked frantically to stop the bleeding. The wound was bad, bone deep, but Junho was conscious and fighting the pain. "Leave me," Junho gasped. "I'm slowing you down." "Nobody gets left behind," Jiwoo said firmly. It was the human way. They protected their wounded, even when it would be tactically smarter to abandon them. It was an irrational behavior that confused most alien species. Humans simply couldn't leave their own behind. The Vorth observed this and adjusted their strategy. If humans would defend wounded members, then creating wounded was a valid tactic. It would force the humans into a defensive position where they could be slowly overwhelmed. But the Vorth didn't understand human psychology as well as they thought. Daehyun went into the jungle that night, alone. Jiwoo tried to stop him, but the older man refused. "They're hunting us. Time to show them that humans can hunt too." In the darkness, Daehyun became something else. He moved through the jungle like a ghost, using every skill he had learned in his years of military service. He set traps using materials from the outpost, tripwires connected to mining charges, deadfalls made from logs, even simple nooses that would catch forth drones and hold them suspended. More importantly, he started hunting the hunters. When he found a Vorth drone, he killed it silently and moved on. He left no trace of his passage, became part of the jungle itself. The Vorth had never encountered prey that fought back this way. Their hive-mind communication started showing patterns of confusion. Drones were disappearing without sending distress signals. Traps were killing multiple drones before they could transmit warnings. Back at the outpost, Mireille worked feverishly on her pheromone jammer. Hyunsik helped, using his knowledge of biochemistry to analyze the chemical compounds. Yoonji contributed her expertise in plant chemistry, finding local substances that could mimic Vorth pheromones. On the third day, they were ready. Junho was stable, but couldn't fight. Soo-hyun volunteered to stay with him, armed and ready to defend their position. The rest of them would go on offense. "The Vorth Queen will be within 500 meters, Hyunsik explained, pointing at his scanner. "She coordinates all the drones. If we kill her, they lose coordination." "How do we find her?" Jiwoo asked. "We make her come to us," Mireille said, holding up her improvised jammer. "This broadcasts a distress signal in Vorth pheromones. She'll think one of her drones is in trouble and move closer to investigate." They set up in a clearing using Soo-hyun's transport as bait. When they activated the jammer, the response was immediate. Vorth drones poured out of the jungle from every direction. But this time they were uncoordinated, confused by the false signals Mireille was broadcasting. Daehyun appeared from the jungle behind the Vorth advance, cutting off their retreat. He had spent 3 days learning their patterns, understanding their tactics. Now he used that knowledge to devastating effect. The fight was brutal and desperate. Humans didn't have the Vorth's natural weapons or armor, but they had something else: adaptability. They used the environment, used tools, used their ability to think creatively under pressure. Hyunsik spotted the Queen first, a larger Vorth with specialized organs that pulsed with bioluminescence as she transmitted commands. "There!" Jiwoo grabbed mining charges from the transport. "Clear a path." What happened next became a story told across the galaxy. Jiwoo ran directly at the Vorth Queen, carrying enough explosive to kill himself along with her. The drones tried to stop him, but his crew covered his advance. Daehyun's precise shots, Mireille's improvised weapons, Hyunsik's medical knowledge turned to lethal purpose. Jiwoo reached the Queen and dove, rolling under her defensive drones. He planted the charges and ran, his legs pumping with the endurance that only humans possessed. The explosion killed the Queen and 24 drones. The remaining Vorth scattered. The Coalition Security Council chamber was designed to be impressive. Representatives from 40 species sat in a circular arrangement, each delegation positioned to ensure no one species dominated the others. Today, the chamber buzzed with tension. Ambassador Kyung stood in the center, a human woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had served as Earth's representative for 7 years, navigating the complex politics of galactic government. Today was her most difficult session yet. "The Council recognizes Representative Velmars of the Talvisian Assembly," the speaker announced. Velmars rose, his forearms gesturing in formal patterns as he spoke. The Talvisians were bureaucrats by nature, tall and thin with pale skin and enormous eyes. They excelled at administration and record-keeping, and they took coalition law very seriously. I bring forward a motion to restrict human military activities within coalition space, Velmars began, his voice carrying the harmonics that made Talvisian's speech sound like music. Evidence suggests that humans pose a potential threat to galactic stability. The chamber erupted in debate. Ambassador Kyung remained still, waiting for her chance to respond. Velmars activated holographic displays showing incident reports. The Viridian 7 encounter, the Station Epsilon defense, Yuna's demonstration, the Tanis 4 massacre. Each incident showed humans fighting against superior numbers and winning through methods that other species found disturbing. In each case, humans demonstrated disproportionate aggression, Velmars argued. Their success rate in combat scenarios exceeds all statistical models. Their psychology shows concerning comfort with violence, and their homeworld's history reveals thousands of years of continuous warfare. Other representatives murmured agreement. The Visians, who had lost warriors to human mercenaries. The Crawl, who had learned to respect human determination through painful experience. Even some of humanity's allies looked concerned. Ambassador Kyung, the speaker said, "You may respond." Kyung walked to the center display, her movements calm and controlled. Representative Velmars has presented selective data. Let me provide context. She pulled up comparative statistics. Yes, humans succeed in combat scenarios, but examine why. We succeed because we refuse to surrender when others would. We succeed because we adapt to circumstances that would kill other species. We succeed because we evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. That is precisely why you are dangerous, Velmars interrupted. No, Kyung said firmly. That is why we are survivors. Every species in this council has a history of warfare. The Crawl built their civilization on military conquest. The Visians evolved as pack predators. The Talvisians themselves fought a civil war that lasted 3 centuries. Do you restrict their military activities? Those species learned peace, Velmars countered. Humans continue to seek conflict. We seek employment, Kyung corrected. Human mercenaries take contracts protecting coalition citizens and assets. We follow coalition law. We integrate peacefully with other species. Show me one instance of unprovoked human aggression against coalition members. Velmars couldn't. The evidence showed humans defending themselves or fulfilling legitimate security contracts, never attacking without cause. But the damage was done. The motion wouldn't pass today, but seeds of doubt had been planted. Other species were watching humans now, wondering if these small, supposedly fragile creatures were more dangerous than anyone had realized. While the council debated, another plot was unfolding in the shadows. General Thoros of the Valdran Empire sat in his private office, reviewing reports on human performance. The Valdran were warriors like the Crawl, but they valued strategy over brute force. They had built an empire through superior tactics and careful planning. Thoros saw something in humans that others missed. Potential. They are perfect weapons, he said to his aide, a younger Valdran officer. Small enough to infiltrate. Tough enough to survive. Adaptable enough to complete any mission, and they are available for hire. But the council is discussing restrictions on human military service, the aide pointed out. Which is exactly why we must recruit them now, Thoros replied, before they are forbidden from such work. He had already begun the process. Human mercenary teams were being recruited for black operations, missions that the coalition couldn't officially acknowledge. Hostage rescue in hostile territory, elimination of pirate strongholds, political assassinations disguised as accidents. Seojin's squad had taken several such contracts, not realizing they were being studied as much as employed. Each mission was carefully monitored, data collected on human performance under various conditions. Seojin himself was starting to have doubts. The missions were getting darker, the moral lines blurrier. When his team was ordered to eliminate a political dissident on a neutral world, he refused. The contract is void, he told his handler. This isn't security work. This is murder. The handler, a Valdran officer, didn't argue. As you wish, but remember we have records of all your previous missions. Cooperation ensures those records remain classified. It was blackmail, simple and effective. Seojin realized too late that they had been trapped. Every mission had been illegal, every operation unsanctioned. If exposed, human mercenaries would be banned from Coalition space, and Seojin's squad would be tried as war criminals. Elsewhere, Yuna was discovering similar problems. As a security consultant, she had access to Coalition databases. While researching a contract, she stumbled across something disturbing: surveillance programs targeting human colonies. The data was extensive: population counts, military capabilities, resource assessments, even psychological profiles of human leaders. It looked like intelligence gathering for an invasion. She copied what she could and contacted Ambassador Kyung through encrypted channels. "We have a problem. The Coalition is preparing for conflict with humanity. Or preparing to defend against us," Kyung replied after reviewing the data. "Someone is feeding the Council false information, making humans appear more dangerous than we are." "Who benefits from that?" Yuna asked. Kyung didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was heavy with concern. "Anyone who wants to use humans as weapons. If we're banned from peaceful work, some of us will take illegal contracts out of desperation. Then we really will become the threat they fear." Meanwhile, Taejin was facing his own crisis. The young pilot served aboard the Coalition vessel Star of Unity, a mixed-species ship designed to represent cooperation between different cultures. He was good at his job, possibly the best pilot on the ship, but his crewmates had started treating him differently. Small things at first: questions about human aggression, jokes about Deathworlders, comments about whether humans should be allowed in positions of authority. Then it became serious. When the ship was ambushed by pirates in neutral space, Taejin performed brilliantly. He outmaneuvered the attackers, giving the weapons officers clear shots while avoiding enemy fire. His actions saved the ship and hundreds of lives, but instead of commendations, he faced a military tribunal. "Your combat performance was excessive," the prosecutor argued. "You took unnecessary risks that endangered the crew." Taejin couldn't believe what he was hearing. "I saved the ship. The alternative was capture or destruction. You also demonstrated concerning enthusiasm for combat. Several crew members reported that you seemed to enjoy the engagement." "I was focused on my job," Taejin protested. "Human stress responses cause hyperfocus, not enjoyment." But the tribunal wasn't interested in human psychology. They were interested in finding reasons to restrict human military service. The verdict was suspension pending psychological evaluation, a decision that would effectively end his career. The three situations converged when General Thoris's conspiracy was exposed. A journalist investigating human mercenaries discovered the connection to Coalition intelligence. The story broke across the galaxy. Coalition military officers had been hiring human mercenaries for illegal operations, while simultaneously pushing for restrictions on human rights. The scandal was massive. Protests erupted on human colonies. Several Coalition species expressed outrage at the manipulation. Others doubled down on their fear of humans, claiming it proved they were too dangerous to trust. Ambassador Kyung demanded an emergency council session. "This conspiracy proves that humans are being victimized, not acting as aggressors. We request formal investigation and justice for those who were coerced into illegal operations." But before the council could respond, the Kralfang made an announcement that changed everything. Thex appeared on public broadcasts, his massive form dominating the screen. "I speak for the mercenary guilds. We have evidence that Coalition intelligence manipulated both humans and mercenaries, creating conflict to justify restrictions on human expansion." He displayed documents showing the full scope of the conspiracy: General Thoris's recruitment program, the surveillance of human colonies. Even the original contract for the Vorth to capture human specimens had been suggested by Coalition officers. "Humans are not the threat," Thex said. "They are being made into scapegoats. The mercenary guilds reject this manipulation. We offer the captured humans from our recent operations a choice: execution or trial by combat in the arena." The arena was an ancient tradition, a gladiatorial system where disputes between mercenary companies The arena on the neutral moon of Karvesh was ancient, built thousands of years ago when disputes between species were settled through combat rather than diplomacy. It had been updated with modern technology, but the basic structure remained. A massive circular floor surrounded by seats that could hold millions of spectators. Today, billions watched across the galaxy through live broadcasts. Seojin stood in the preparation chamber with his team, checking equipment one final time. They had been given basic weapons and armor, standard arena loadout that gave no one species an advantage. The rules were simple: survive 3 challenges, and they would earn their freedom and humanity's full acceptance into coalition society. Fail and they would die. Remember, Seojun said to his team, we fight together. No heroics, no individual glory. We survive as a unit or not at all. Jiho, the demolitions expert, nodded while organizing his limited supply of explosives. Suyeon cleaned her rifle with practiced efficiency, her sniper's eyes already calculating angles and distances from the arena maps they had been given. Mino checked medical supplies, knowing they would need every bandage and stimulant before this was over. Hein stretched, loosening muscles for the close-quarters combat that was his specialty. They were 5 humans against whatever the arena would throw at them. 5 humans representing their entire species. The gate opened, and they walked into the arena. The crowd noise was deafening, millions of aliens watching, judging, waiting to see if humans were truly as formidable as recent events suggested, or if they had simply been lucky. The arena floor was bare dirt, perhaps 200 meters across, with scattered obstacles for cover. The announcer's voice boomed through speakers. First challenge, the Crawl Champions. 5 Crawl warriors entered from the opposite gate. Each stood 3 meters tall, their scales gleaming in the arena lights. These were not ordinary mercenaries, but champions, veterans of hundreds of battles. They carried traditional crawl weapons, heavy blades designed to use their superior strength. The crowd roared. This match seemed obvious. 5 humans, each weighing maybe 70 kilograms, against 5 crawl weighing 300 kilograms each. Size, strength, reach all favored the crawl. Seojin raised his hand, signaling his team to spread out. The crawl charged, expecting to use their momentum to overwhelm the smaller opponents. Instead, the humans moved like water around the crawl advance. Soyeon's first shot hit a crawl in the eye, the only vulnerable point in their thick scales. The warrior stumbled and Jiho was ready. A small explosive at the crawl's feet sent him crashing down. The crawl weren't stupid. They adjusted immediately, moving to surround the humans. But humans had evolved as pack hunters, and pack tactics were in their blood. They moved as a unit, covering each other's backs, using the arena obstacles to break up crawl formations. Hein engaged the largest crawl in close combat, which seemed suicidal. But he wasn't trying to match strength with strength. He was faster, more flexible, and he knew exactly where to strike. A hit to the knee joint, a strike to the throat, a kick to destabilize. The crawl warrior had the power to kill him with one blow, but Hein never let him land that blow. Minho threw a medical compound designed to dilate blood vessels. It was harmless to humans, but caused the crawl's already aggressive circulatory system to go into overdrive, making them dizzy and disoriented. The fight lasted 8 minutes. When it ended, all 5 crawl warriors were down. Not dead. The arena rules forbade unnecessary killing, but defeated. The humans stood battered but victorious, and the crowd was silent with shock. Seojun helped Hyein wrap a cut on his arm, quick field medicine that other species barely understood. To them, stopping mid-combat to treat minor injuries seemed bizarre. But humans had evolved to keep fighting even when hurt, and quick treatment meant the difference between a functional fighter and a liability. The announcer's voice returned, carrying notes of surprise. Second challenge, the Vissian Swarm. 20 Vissian warriors poured into the arena, quadrupedal predators with natural armor and venomous bites. They moved in coordinated packs, their tactics refined over thousands of years of evolution. The humans formed a circle, backs together, weapons outward. It was an ancient human formation, one that had defended against predators since before they left Earth. The Vissians attacked in waves, trying to overwhelm through numbers. But numbers only worked if you could bring them all to bear at once. The human formation prevented that, forcing the Vissians to attack from limited angles where human weapons could concentrate fire. The battle became a test of endurance. The Vissians were strong, fast, and numerous, but they weren't built for long fights. Their metabolism demanded high energy output, and after 20 minutes of continuous combat, they began to slow. The humans, bred as persistence hunters, were just getting started. Their muscles were designed for hour-long chases, not burst speed. Their cardiovascular systems could maintain steady output for extended periods. They could sweat, cooling their bodies while their opponents overheated in their armored hides. 1 hour into the fight, the Visians were exhausted. 2 hours and they were barely moving. The humans methodically eliminated them one at a time, their own exhaustion evident but their determination unbreakable. When the last Visian fell, the humans collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, but they were alive and they had won again. The arena medics rushed in with water and medical supplies, mandatory between challenges. Ambassador Kyung watched from the diplomatic box, her hands gripping the railing. "They can't survive a third challenge," she said to the human delegation around her. "They're exhausted." "They're humans," Yuna replied, standing nearby with Jiwoo, Daehyun, and others who had become famous in recent months. "They'll find a way." In the arena, Seojin gathered his team. "Last one. Whatever it is, we face it together." The announcer's voice had lost its entertainment tone, becoming serious. "Final challenge, the Vorth Remnant." Vorth drones flooded into the arena, hundreds of them with a queen drone at their center. It was a death sentence. No species without hive-mind communication could fight Vorth effectively. The coordinated assault should overwhelm any individual fighters, but Seojin's team had fought Vorth before on Tanis 4. They knew the weakness. "Kill the queen," Seojin shouted. The problem was reaching her. The drones formed a living shield, protecting their coordinator with their own bodies. The humans couldn't get close, and sniper fire couldn't penetrate the mass of armored insects. Jiho looked at his remaining explosives, then at Seojin. "I have an idea. You're not going to like it." What followed became legendary. Hein and Jiho charged directly at the Vorth swarm, drawing drones away from the queen. It was suicide, except they weren't trying to survive. They were creating an opening. Sion took the shot of her life, threading a bullet through gaps in the Vorth formation to hit the queen in one of her communication organs. The queen didn't die, but her coordination faltered. That was when Seojin made his move. He grabbed Jiho's last explosive charge and ran, using the momentary confusion to get close. Drones swarmed over him, their mandibles tearing at his armor. He felt pain, felt his body taking damage that would have killed most species through shock alone. But humans could function through shock. Humans could push past pain when necessary. Evolution had given them bodies that refused to quit even when dying. Seojin reached the queen and activated the charge. He had 3 seconds. He used 1 second to throw himself backward. The explosion caught him anyway, sending him flying across the arena floor. The queen died, the drones, losing coordination, scattered in confusion. Hein and Minho, still standing, hunted down the survivors with mechanical precision. When it was over, Seojin lay on the ground, his armor shattered, his body broken. Minho reached him first, already pulling out medical supplies. "Stay with me," Minho said, his hands working frantically. "You're going to be fine." Seojin smiled through the pain. "Did we win?" The arena was silent. Then slowly the aliens began to cheer. Not all of them, but enough. They had witnessed something profound. Humans pushed to their absolute limit, facing impossible odds and refusing to surrender. The arena medics took over from Minho, their advanced technology stabilizing Seojin's injuries. He would survive, though recovery would take months. His team gathered around him, exhausted, injured, but victorious. In the diplomatic box, the Kralfang leadership stood. Thex, his leg still scarred from his encounter with Daehyun months ago, spoke into the broadcast system. "The humans have won. The mercenary guilds honor our agreement. We support full human inclusion in coalition society, with all rights and responsibilities that entails." The Coalition Security Council had no choice but to accept the outcome. Arena judgments were legally binding. The motion to restrict human activities was withdrawn. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned something. Humans weren't superior warriors. They weren't invincible. They were simply survivors who refused to give up, who adapted to any situation, who protected their own even when tactically disadvantageous. 3 months later, the galaxy looked different. Human mercenaries and security contractors were in higher demand than ever, but now they were respected rather than feared. The conspiracy involving General Thoros had been fully exposed.